the Climate High Level Champions team, and I'm very pleased to be guiding you through this session, which I hope will be informative as well as interactive. The incoming COP30 presidency recently introduced the structure for the Climate Action Agenda. The event that we're part of really builds on that foundation, and it's an opportunity for the incoming COP30 presidency, as well as the Climate High Level Champions, to share updates on the developments thus far with the Action Agenda, and also to get some insight into how this is being mobilized in a way that can build collaboration and scale. We have 3 objectives for the session. The first being an opportunity to engage with the Action Agenda and give you some updates and insights on the activities and the progress made thus far. We'd like to take this opportunity as well to gather insights from party and non-party stakeholders on the framework and really make sure that it's able to support the degree of ambition that we want to see and that it aligns with the UNFCCC negotiations track as well. Thirdly, we're inviting African initiatives to be part of the Action Agenda and really to contribute to the success of the COP30 program on the agenda and beyond. So in terms of the structure of the session today, we will have some opening remarks, welcome remarks. We will dive into the Action Agenda itself and get a sense of where we are. And then there's a wonderful opportunity really to engage and get questions and comments from the stakeholders and the participants in the room today. And then ultimately, we'll close the session off. I'd like to call on Ms. Noura Hamlaji, who's the Deputy Executive Secretary of the UNFCCC, to give us the welcome remarks.
Thank you, and good afternoon to all. It's an honor to welcome you to this second and renewed Climate Week. And I would like to I wanted to come today to also extend my gratitude to our 2 climate high-level champions for welcoming us and convening us today. And I have also a personal thank you for them. First of all, for the passion they are putting to the work, for the special also support they are putting to the Climate Week, coming each time, really participating, moderating events, and I think they are putting a special and important energy, really it's a special thank you, Dan, Nigar, from my side, on behalf of our UNFCCC Executive Secretary, a big thank you to you for all the work that you do. That is very important and even will be more important in COP. And we all know that we are building up towards COP. So we know that over the past decade, the champions and the Global Climate Action Agenda have played a vital role in supporting parties, starting with the Marrakesh Partnership, which brought initiatives and coalitions under one umbrella to mobilize ambition and drive action. Now, we know also, and I think the incoming COP30 presidency has really put an emphasis on the importance of implementation and the shift towards implementation. So if we recall the letter from the incoming COP president mentioning that the rule book of Paris, so to speak, has been completed and now time to implementation is important, we need this big shift. And I think the Climate Weeks and the Action Agenda specifically will now take center stage in implementation. That's really an agenda of scaling up, accelerating implementation that will be very important. And I see 2 important elements here that I would like to highlight with you. One is the acceleration and the scale. I believe that when we talk about transition that is needed and the urgency for this transition to happen, we need to take not only about action, but action at scale. So let us keep in mind in whatever we do, how the scale and impact could be our really roadmap in what we do. The second element I wanted also to share, and I think for Climate Weeks is especially important, is contextualization. The action has different priorities and different contexts in which it happens. So if I take now, we are here in Ethiopia, in Africa. If I take the challenges of action for Africa, if I take just one sector, we know that, and we are proud to see that in terms of action on renewable energy, we have a big boost that has happened, and we had 2 trillion investment in renewable energy, which is a big increase. But when we break that down and we look at where this investment is happening, we can see disparities between regions. And when we look at this region, we know that only 3% of this 2 trillion were invested in what is actually the continent that has the biggest potential in renewable energy. So I think my second message is also the action has to be contextualized so that we can look at what are the priorities, what are the specific bottlenecks, understanding what are the hurdles and the obstacles in having more investment. When I take again this example of energy, more investment in what, as a first glance, would look at a very, very big potential. So 2 things, the scale and the contextualization will be extremely important. So just to conclude, I would like to say that the UNFCCC Secretariat looks forward to working with the Presidency and the champions towards that, towards Belém, and towards scaling up and accelerating implementation. I thank you, and I thank again the 2 champions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those warm and rousing remarks. I'd now like to hand over to our COP29 Climate High-Level Champion to give her opening remarks.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank you for such a kind and nice words. It's our honor to be here, and I think that it's the common mission that we all have, very noble mission, and we all need to try to do our best to make this happen, because we discuss and we speak, whatever we decide will impact people's lives. So that's why this meeting is important for us. And dear friends, if we look back to what was achieved in the last 10 years, starting from Paris Agreement till now, a lot has been done. Yes, still not enough. Many things have been, we need to do more, but a lot has been done, and it shows that if we act together, we can really shift the trajectory. That's clear for us. And at COP29 reinforced the momentum with the pledges on energy, on agriculture, on resilience, on finance, and with the landmark 300 billion commitment that laid the foundation for the 1.3 trillion goal announced in Baku. We have, as you know, we have placed a special focus on small and medium enterprises because this is the backbone of economy, and especially in the global south. And for Africa, we know that SMEs are something that that is very much comes from societies. It reflects with your private sector and economies. So we have launched our climate proofing SME campaign, which now reaches to 90 million SMEs globally. So we are now working closely with COP30 presidency, and we need to make the next step. And this next step is extremely important. And as COP29 champion, I strongly support the idea behind this unified action agenda, because as I said, it's all about people's life, it's about transition to green economy, it's about efficiency. And this is what we are trying to do. And it has been already a couple of months that COP30 presidency and climate champions together are having these consultations with parties and with non-party stakeholders to get your feedback, to understand what your expectations are, what are your aspirations, because COP30 presidency and champions, we are trying to put some frame to unify the agenda and to see what is working, what is not working, and how we can improve the process altogether. So that's why I don't want to take much of your time. I think that it's all about openness and transparency that we are trying to build. I would like you to be convinced that every message that you pass, every question that you ask, every criticism or every support that you show matters. It matters because it helps us to improve the process. UNFCCC, champions, and the presidency are working together to make this process more open and efficient. So that's why thank you for your time today, and by that, we hope to get your feedback. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those remarks, Nigar. I mean, what I'm hearing is about collaboration, it's about momentum, but really being a truly unified approach that welcomes and really provides the space for people to engage and really provide the inputs. So thank you for that. With that, I would like to hand over to our COP30 Climate High-Level Champion to provide opening remarks as well.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Dear Nora, Nigar, Bruna, Heitumetse, thank you so much for being here with us. We are at the decisive new chapter in global climate cooperation. The COP30 Unified Action Agenda is a practical, inclusive, and science-based framework rooted in the global stocktake and aligned with negotiated outcomes. Its purpose: accelerate delivery by uniting governments, business, civil society, and finance around 6 strategic axes. We are already seeing progress across those axes. First one, transitioning energy, industry, and transport, where clean energy investment is growing but needs even more scaling. Second, stewarding forests, oceans, and biodiversity. And here, nature can create 32 million jobs by 2030, and private financing is increasing. The third, transforming agriculture and food systems, where regenerative practices are cutting emissions and boosting resilience. Fourth, building resilience for cities, infrastructure, and water, with strong progress via Race to Resilience and the Sharm Adaptation Agenda. Fifth, fostering human and social development, from green jobs to education and health resilience, where we could generate 24 million jobs by 2030. And sixth, unleashing enablers, where finance, technology, and capacity building are critical cross-cutting levers. There are 3 imperatives for success, and this is the call to action. First, deliver real progress through initiatives and coalitions, aligned with the 6 axes, collaborate and report outcomes. Second, show visible leadership from non-state actors, CEOs, mayors, civil society, that can showcase scalable solutions and inspire action at COP30. Third, mobilize finance where it matters most, scale public and private capital, design blended and innovative instruments, and channel resources to mitigation and adaptation fronts. My core message to you: let's turn ambition into real-world implementation, align efforts for accelerated global climate action. Finally, an additional call to action: let's join the agenda Mutirão now. Let's bring solutions, leadership, and capital to COP30 to deliver transformation in this decisive decade. And finally, again, as a good Brazilian, let me tell you that there is a party this evening at 6:30, led by our COP30 youth champion, Marcele. The Mutirão of Youth Plus, the intergenerational network event at the AICC Hotel, first floor. Please show up so that we can also celebrate. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for those remarks, Dan. I think we have the passion, we have the direction, and from Bruno, we'll get some insight into how the framework of the action agenda is going to assist us to get there. Bruno, I'd like to hand over to you.
Thank you very much, and I'm so sorry. Well, first of all, it's great to be here with you, and really appreciate the leadership of both of our champions and the very joint work that we're doing with the UNFCCC team and with the Climate Champions team. This has really been a joint effort. When we're talking about a unified action agenda, it is really a unified action agenda. We have really been working hand in hand in this. And it's a real pleasure to be able to be with all of you today and to be able to share with you, as Nigar has said, we want to be very transparent and to build this with all of you who are actually doing the work. So we have done these sessions in Panama when we were starting to set out the vision, in Bonn when we presented the framework of the agenda, and now what we want to do is give you a sense of how progress is being made across the actual implementation piece that we have set ourselves to do. And then we really want to hear from you on how you can contribute, and also how we can best put in place a framework for the next 5 years that is useful to all of you, that's actually helping us progress together. So if we can, I think, thank you, Ian. So maybe just to recap a little bit on where we started, for the COP30 presidency, as you have seen in the letters from Ambassador André Correa do Lago, we have set out 3 key goals for COP. The first is to reinforce multilateralism. We think it's very important that we speak about how important this is and that we show how this has progressed over the last 10 years. I think Nigar has talked about where the action agenda has been, but actually how important the Paris Agreement has been for us to accelerate, to work and to deliver action. The second big priority is to connect climate to people's real lives. So we know that this seems like it's very far away, what is being discussed here from what's actually happening on the ground. We want to bring these things closer. We want that what we're doing here actually matters to the people who are on the ground. And the third thing is to accelerate solution. As Nora said, as Dan said, it's about accelerating implementation and practice of the Paris Agreement. And we're working across 4 pillars: the Leader Summit, the negotiations, the action agenda, and the global mobilization, which is something that Brazil has brought as something separate because of how important it is for us to actually make sure that we're working with the society, that we're mobilizing that. So we've created a special pillar for that. But the action agenda is where the voluntary action is. And so we want to put it in service of the implementation of the process. If we can move, and I think, this is just to give a sense, exactly as Nigar said, we want to build on the base of what has been done. We want to build on the success of the last 10 years of the action agenda. And we want to innovate in 2 key ways for the action agenda from COP30 onwards. The first is on the what. So you will see that the framework that we have built is something that is not what Brazil thinks is important and wants to put on the table, but rather trying to connect this to as an implementation tool of the Paris Agreement and specifically of the global stocktake. So we hope that that is a what that can remain over time. And the second way that we want to innovate is on the how. So not focusing on bringing new initiatives to the table, but rather working from the initiatives that have been created over the last 10 years and focusing on delivering the results. And we'll go a little bit into all of this, if we can move. So on the structure, you have seen Ambassador André's 4th letter to the international community, and this is what we presented in Bonn. We want to build a framework around the global stocktake, and we hope that this is something that makes sense and that can not only be for COP30, but something that can be continued over time. The logic is that if we have the 5-year cycle in the Paris Agreement, the global stocktake is what tells us how we're going, and what tells us what we need to do to get back on track. And so we think that that's a very important guidance that the action agenda can follow in terms of becoming that one of those implementation instruments of the process. And we have basically translated the action agenda into the global stocktake into 6 axes, 30 key objectives, and a number of solutions. There will be multiple solutions to deliver on those key objectives. You have seen, if we can move, the 6 thematic axes, and Dan has spoken a bit of where the world is on each of those. So energy, I won't go. I hope that you've all seen the letter and that you have seen this many times, but we'll make the presentation available as well. And you've seen also the 30 key objectives, so I won't dwell too much into them, but the idea is that they're all based on the global stocktake. They're about what are the things that we need to deliver with a bit more specificity within those axes. If you look at the small numbers across the axis, those are the paragraphs of the global stocktake where we've taken that from. So it's just to give a sense of how this is being built. And now there will be a number of solutions that will be a part of how we deliver on those key objectives. So we want to be using the positive language, right? We don't want to be talking about problems. We want to be talking about what can we do, what is already happening that is helping us deliver on that, and how can we scale that up. So that is the logic of looking into these solutions and building them over time. And as Nora said, they will be different from region to region. Not everything applies to everyone. It has to be locally driven. It has to be specific to each of our contexts. To update you on the process. So we've talked about the structure, and I think we've started to set out in Bonn as well, and in the letter that the champion said with the work program of the Marrakesh Partnership, our intended process to put this in place. So the idea is that we started from a big mapping of what has been the initiatives of the action agenda launched over the last 10 years. There has been a lot of work gone, especially from the high-level champions team, into this mapping exercise, and I'll give you numbers in a moment. But the idea is that we start from them. And so we're gathering those initiatives to form what we're calling activation groups. For each of the 30 key objectives, there is one activation group with the initiatives that have been created in the past. The second step is that we're asking then the initiatives to measure, to tell us what results they have been able to achieve, so that we can tell the story about the results, not only give the stage to shining new announcements, but actually give a lot of visibility to the results that are happening. And the idea is that we strengthen in this way the transparency and the reporting mechanisms of the UNFCCC, in particular the Global Climate Action Portal, NASCA, and our Yearbook of Global Climate Action. Third, we want to showcase where these solutions exist. We want to be able to turn the positive discussion around globally and to connect to the realities of people when we're talking about these solutions. What are the solutions that work for climate, for people, for the economies, and that are, in that sense, helping us move along those objectives? So we want to give visibility to that. A number of these initiatives have those banks of solutions. We were just in the session with subnationals. All of the networks have these examples coming from every city, every state government around the world. So we want to give visibility to that through a granary of solutions. And finally, we want to build the future together. So we want to propose this framework of the plans to accelerate solutions on how do we scale them up, where they exist, what is blocking them from gaining scale faster, how do we address, unblock those roadblocks together. And so to now update you on where we are, on this exercise that we've done, this huge mapping of initiatives, this is from last week. We've gotten to a first batch of numbers. We've found that there are over 600 initiatives that have been created in the last 10 years, so that is a lot. And of those 600 that we identified, 300 have already accepted our invitations to join the activation groups. So we didn't know when we started this exercise if they were dead or alive, if these initiatives actually still existed. We know now that 300 at least do still exist, and they are willing to continue to work. And they are being a part of these 30 activation groups. We have published a first cut of that list in the COP30 website. So if you're curious, this will continuously be updated because, of course, there's authorization also to publish. So it will come in over time. And this is what an activation group looks like. It is composed of the initiatives, but it has a secretariat, so that it's not something that it's only called Presidency and the Champions team, but it is also, we have invited international organizations and the Marrakesh Partnership to be with us on coordinating this process in the hopes that this can help us build continuity over time. So for each of those groups, we have these groups of secretariats who are coordinating the process. And again, this is also in our website, so you can look group by group who is in the secretariat. Move. The second piece is on measures. So actually we have now live, and really appreciate the joint effort with the NASCA team. We have sent to all of the initiatives the request to report this year. And the report this year is going to have a bit more than usual on NASCA. So we've asked, in addition to what's normally requested from the initiatives, that they try to make an effort to look at how they're doing in terms of results. So we're trying to provoke that the initiatives come to us not only with the process-based indicators, but as much as possible move towards results-based indicators. And we know that they're all important and they all have a role to play, but we're trying to track that a little bit more. So hopefully by COP we'll have a good show of numbers to you as well. We can move. And then on the granary of solutions, where we have also invited all of the initiatives to share with us the case studies that they have. And we are building this website. Claire is here doing a lot of this work. And this will be a website hopefully launched around New York Climate Week. So this will be public by then, and we'll continue to build on that. And that's when we launch a social media campaign as well, so that everyone can join in. We can move. And then on the plans to accelerate solutions, within the activation groups, we have started to identify a few of these solutions that we're building plans around. And this is very much work in progress. So this is just an example of the Axis 1 on energy. On the different activation groups, what are we working on to try to see if plans will emerge? But again, as I said, very much work in progress. We hope that New York will be a moment when we'll start to gather support around those plans and to be able to present a bit more of what are those that are being developed. But that is where we would like a lot of efforts from all of the stakeholders to come in and to rally behind how do we accelerate these solutions, right? So again, going to the session that we had this morning on subnationals, we were talking a lot about financial instruments. And there are different coalitions and organizations that are building different pieces of this. And we want them to work together in this plan so that we build coherent pathways to how do we actually do what we're setting ourselves out to do. So if you can move, how this lands at COP itself in terms of the event, there will be a dedicated space to the action agenda. As you know, we normally have the Marrakesh Partnership Lounge. We're shifting it a little bit this year. We will have 6 thematic areas, one for each of the 6 axes, and that is where we hope will be the space for us to bring all of the results of this process. That is something that is built together with all of these stakeholders. In addition to that, you have seen the thematic days published now, and those will be where we'll have the high-level moments for each of those axes. So when we bring the ministers, when we bring the CEOs, the mayors, the governors, and the leaders of society. So we can move. I think in timeline, I've spoken a little bit to this already. We're now in the Climate Week in Africa. I think there will be a push as well around New York, and the last push will be the pre-COP in Belém, when we try to get things as much as possible in shape to be announced in Belém. How everyone can participate, sorry, this is a bit light, but I think we're trying to translate from, you have the initiatives joining the activation groups. How can a city or a business or a civil society organization participate in this process? The first thing is we want to strengthen those initiatives and those coalitions where they exist. So our invitation to those individual stakeholders is that you, first of all, map what initiatives are you already a part of. and that you can strengthen. And if you're not and you want to do something, there's probably an initiative already working on that. Please join and support that initiative achieve those results. Help them then measure results. So if you send your results, that then builds up and we're able to show the collective progress that we're making. We also want to know your cases, what is happening on the ground on each of your realities, that you help us build that granary of solutions with your information. And finally, do help us build those plans to accelerate solutions. I think what we want to know is, if you're an investor, what is blocking you from investor more in some of these solutions? If you are a government, what is stopping you from advancing faster on that agenda? What do you need to move faster? And so that by bringing these stakeholders across cohesive and connected plans, we're able to all move and to move away some of these blockages. So maybe I will stop. The last thing to say is that at this COP, by our fortune, we have the task to also put on the table a proposal for the next 5 years of the action agenda. This has been done in the Marrakesh COP, in the Glasgow COP, and now we want to do that as well. So we hope that some of this, what we're building, we want to learn a lot from it and to put on the table a proposal for the next 5 years. This is something that, as Nigar said, we want to build with you. So we want to have several moments of dialogue and conversation. We've had a call for submissions, and Ian was happy to tell us that this was one of the highest numbers of responses that we've had. So it's over 60 responses from the call for submissions, but we want to continue on those consultations. So we will hold a special webinar for parties on the 5-year plan so that you can give us your feedback and how you would like to be engaged in this process. We will do some things around the New York Climate Week, which we'll share in due course. And we will do a session at pre-COP to share the draft of the plan so that we can have a moment of quality in terms of getting feedback on that ahead of COP. But also, we very much welcome the informal engagement. So some organizations have offered to us to host roundtables to talk about the future of the action agenda. We're very happy to do that kind of thing. And equally, for bilaterals with the countries especially, we're very open, the 2 champions here with us, to be able to do that. So really appreciate the opportunity of having this conversation here, and really hope that this continues as we have been doing over this time. These are the questions, but I'll bring it back to.
Thank you very much, Bruna, for that contribution. A tremendous amount of work has been done to structure what is a very complex landscape. And importantly, the opportunity is now available to really engage and be part of that process. So with that, I'd like to open the floor to questions, to comments. We'll take those a few questions at a time and then allow some responses. I believe there's a roving mic that can just assist. So if you please just raise your hand and we can just note where you are and start the conversation, and I hope what will be robust engagement on the action agenda.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for the presentation. It's truly an honor to have the opportunity to see this presentation in person. And just to also say, tomorrow is the International Day of the World's Indigenous Women. So greetings to Indigenous women of the world. I'm Brian Bishkul, Maya Tsutuhil, Martios Chebe. That's a greeting in my Indigenous language, and I'm here representing the Indigenous peoples organizations. My question is related to your presentation and to the action agenda. What do you see the role is of advocacy playing in the action agenda? Because that's a big topic and it's pretty much interlinked. And in many cases, we see many conversations happening in silos at the COP, where we have ministries and people making decisions that don't necessarily listen directly from people that are having impacts on the ground. So how do you see that playing out? And if there's an opportunity to talk about the issues of mining, for example, of affected communities in those spaces as well, and the issues of carbon markets and so on.
While people are still just, I think, digesting what is a hefty amount of work and consolidated effort, I think we can take a stab at that first question and hope we'll get more engagement. And even if it's comments or thoughts that you'd like to share with the room, they'd be most welcome.
No, thank you so much for that. And I think that this is something that we got feedback in Bonn as well about the engagement of civil society, of the different people in this process, that we have done our best to make sure that we incorporate. And you've seen the 5th letter of Ambassador André about everything starts and ends with people. And we have been very actively working with some of the groups in our government. So for example, our own Ministry of Indigenous Peoples, to develop some of these plans that are focused on solutions that matter to them. Our Ministry of Women's is working on a solution around disaster. How do you create specific protocols for women in response to disaster? Our Indigenous Peoples Ministries is working on a solution about land tenure and how we can advance funding for that within the indigenous communities. And so we hope that more will come. There is a very important space for advocacy across the pillars, and we think that that does drive, action. But in the action agenda, we don't actually negotiate text. So there's a point of advocacy about what people need to do and how do we build the spirit that is needed for people to come with their actions to the table, definitely. And we do want to have some of those debates, so elevating some of those debates at the political level in the thematic days. But we also really want that where that advocacy is being made, that maybe there is a point about thinking as well, what are the solutions that I would like to see? And what am I able to mobilize and bring to the table, so that I'm not only, asking and absolutely making sure that your voices are being heard, especially for the negotiations, but that here we're also actually making progress on the things that matter to us and that we can move on a voluntary space. But very happy to continue to listen, and if you have ideas, we're very much open for that.
And maybe just add that mining and carbon credits are inside the 30 key objectives and their solutions. So we will be talking a lot about those themes for sure.
Thank you very much for those initial inputs. I just pointed out incorrectly, there are a few microphones that are dotted around the room. I'm really happy to urge you to please just make your way to one of the microphones, and happy to get your inputs.
Thank you so much for the presentation. My name is Shadi Khalil. I'm from a civil society organization called Oil Change International. I was curious about a couple of components specifically on the transitioning away from fossil fuel. So one of the points were focused on the inclusive planning of the energy transition. Does this mean specifically timelines, the equity of the transition, or the implementation? You can possibly elaborate more on this point, explain it to us. And then on the oil and gas industry solutions for the transition, obviously there is a lot of concerns related to civil society when it comes to how the oil and gas industry and polluting industry in general are participating within the UNFCCC process and how it affects the negotiation. And some of the solutions that are being presented are portrayed also as maybe untested, not exactly reliable. So how are we going to avoid this influence and also the risk of presenting maybe solutions that defies the renewable goals that one of the objectives that you're working on? Thank you.
Hello. First, thank you for the panel about the introduction of the top 30 presidency and preparation. I'm Kevin. Today I represent the African Climate Foundation, and we're very lucky to get involved in the early stage and sitting in the activation groups. So my question to Bruna from Top 30 team is like, because we know we have like 300 initiatives in the activation group. So the next step is assessment and the selection. So I want to understand more about the criteria and the selection process. And my second question is about alignment between negotiation track and our activation plan or activation groups, like how we contribute to the negotiation outcome through the action agenda. And yeah, my last question is like in the activation group, we found out there are so many similarities and synergies among initiatives. How we can organize the synergies and the consolidation. So that's my 3 questions to you. Thank you.
Please come through to the microphone if you have a question. Just 2 in the back, I think, and 2 in the front.
All right, so maybe I'll start and then Nigar, please. But I think those are very, very good questions, and I think you've looked through the whole thing and you went laser sharp on the things that we most need to think about. On the transition away from fossil fuels, when we started out this exercise, you've seen that Ambassador André has been very vocal about this. This has been negotiated. It is now about how do we move on implementation of this. And I think the collective challenge that we have is what can we do to put this to practice. So I've shared that those plans that we're working on, they are still ongoing and work in process. So we will see where we get. But there is definitely a very strong will for us to convene and try to work on those plans as much as we can, where that is possible. So I think on inclusive planning, we are working with our own Ministry of Energy and setting out a bit of what are the requirements at each country level, because this has to be country driven. What are the requirements and what are the needs of the countries when we go about energy planning in this process? What are the things that we need to take into consideration in terms of energy security and so on? And so creating the instruments that support the countries go about that planning process. And I think that then gives us a bit of one piece of the puzzle, let's say, of what we think is needed for this. But this is a collective exercise, so there's nothing impeding anyone from, I'm proposing a new solution. On the oil and gas companies specifically, Ambassador André has also been very vocal, so there's nothing to, he has a very strong position that he wants to bring them to actually discuss. And so he has actively reached out to some of the biggest oil companies. This is building on the initiative that came out of COP28, but previously to that, so OGCI, then OGDC, the charter that was launched at COP28. And what can we do in terms of a next step of that, or how can we report on what has happened from that and build on it? So he does want to bring that to be a part of the discussion. But again, it's a framework of a number of pieces that need to come together. So that is a bit of the thinking in that. And it's all voluntary, and so no one can, we have all agreed on what we need to do. Now we need to see who's willing to do what and make the best in terms of the levers that we can to enable that to happen. But that's an ongoing conversation. So if you have ideas, please do bring them. But also if anyone has agency on doing something, please do bring your action and what can be done more specifically. And then on the points by Kevin, and thank you so much for that. Open my notes. I think that you have touched on the selection of initiatives, so there's no selection. Everyone that has been mapped has been invited to join the groups, and the logic is that everyone that has promised to do something now needs to be able to say, what have you done about what you promised that you would do? So if it matches the criteria that is used by NASCA, the UNFCCC portal, which is basically 2 things. To be an initiative, it needs to be collective. It's not one organization. It's not one business. It has to be a collective, either of one group or several groups coming together. And the second piece of the criteria is it has to have a specific objective that they set out to do that can be measured and monitored over time related to the implementation of the Paris Agreement. So if you match those criteria, you're very welcome to join the activation groups. And then I think the let's say, selection comes from the initiatives themselves. Are they willing to report on their results? Are they willing to join this process and looking into the future with us on building these plans to accelerate solutions? So it will come from them. And it is a request from us that to continue to be a part of the activation groups that they report. So we hope that that will be something that drives more of that transparency into the process. How to contribute to the negotiations? We have shifted this a little bit, and we've seen that in the last COPs, it was a lot about creating the political discussions that then fed into the negotiations. We want to make the action agenda an instrument of implementation, if we're talking about the implementation COP. So that's why we've shifted the logic a little bit, and we've created the framework around what came out of the negotiations. Now we need to implement. And I think the theory of change around that is that action drives more action. If things are evolving, if we're able to implement, if the levers of implementation are in place, then that builds the confidence that you can go further in action. So I think that is a bit of the logic, and hopefully that then naturally feeds back into the negotiations on what is actually possible, making things possible that help us move along. But there are a lot of asks, and I think by bringing the voices of business, of the subnationals into this process, it also voices on some of the requirements to be able to lever these actions. And some of these requirements are about regulation, are about the predictability for investors. And that comes from negotiated text. So hopefully that will become apparent as well.
And I think just on the second point, we heard in Bonn from many parties that they believe this new process could enrich their agenda on negotiation, because as Bruna mentioned, we are also looking for the bottlenecks and why things are not scaling up quickly. So of course, this can be a very interesting theme for further negotiations, especially if this structure and architecture lives for a while. And just regarding the previous point, it is an inclusive agenda, and I think we are trying to have everybody on the table to make sure that we speed up. And I think the other themes of the energy chapter look very strong. So we don't see a negative on having a very inclusive agenda in one of the topics, regardless the others.
We still have the opportunity to take a few more questions or comments. So again, I would invite you to please make your way to the microphones that are scattered around the room, and we're happy to kind of engage and just get a sense of your view, your perception, what you've taken out of this session, and perhaps any other thoughts you might want to share.
I think we would particularly welcome ideas about what the next 5 years should look like from what we're doing.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to interact. Good afternoon, colleagues, and
ownership of the GCA. I think that would it be possible for the champions to gather the pioneering parties that are willing to have a strong, real conversation, operational conversation with the people in initiatives that are part of the GCA? A circle of pioneering parties that are willing to engage with the solutions that we are providing. It's very complex to organize because of the lack of human resources in the delegations, but we need to localize what we are bringing to the table. So, at the national level, with the system now, in many countries and many conversations between countries, national governments, and the GC Secretariat, we should be able to organize national tables where we would propose some initiatives, bring some new perspective on the action, I think. And the final one is the connection between the conference, UN conferences, the different parallel agendas. I think that the champions need to be all those conferences to make the link and create that visibility again for the initiative. And of course, we are very much, we have a lot of expectation coming plans for acceleration solutions. Because then that's also how will this fit the 5 years. That's important for us to understand. So thank you, and sorry I've been talking too much again.
So I will start again. Thank you so much, Carlos, and I think about how to put implement labs that are how do we table. Probably it's not the negotiators who are actually so but a space sees country. We would hope that ways right are that was the logic for secretary process well in connection to what they need. So it can't be an additional task. It has to be an offer of support for the implementation of the NDCs. And we hope that over time we can try to build it in that way of an offer of support, and that we can crowd around the support for implementation of the NDCs. And definitely continued dialogue. I think creating the space for dialogue, and you've talked about the ministries of finance in particular. So they are developing some solutions, and you've talked earlier about country platforms and so on. So our Ministry of Finance is leading on a plan around country platforms, for example. But we cannot bring them a problem. You know, subnationals don't have enough access to finance. You need to bring a specific action points that you would like to see in the plan. Yes, all right. So let's try for that. We'll be happy to create the space for conversation, and within the Secretariat, the logic is that we cross-feed across them so that we can build plans that are servicing more than one objective, and that we go to those who actually have to do it in the end of the day. So we're very happy to create those connections, and we really do think that as specific we can get with instruments, that is the best way for us to advance. And I think from the Brazilian side, you've seen that we're putting on the table TFFF. That is extremely important to us. It is something that we see as, you know, putting on the table what we would like to see in terms of an instrument, and we hope that we can then crowd support around that kind of thing. But we would like more voices from the developing countries coming with those types of solutions that we can build over time.
Thoughts that we can get from the participants in the room, that this is your opportunity.
Hello, I'm Judy. I'm from the UK and I represent an organisation called Stop Ecocide International. And we're leading the global charge really to create a new national and international law of ecocide to protect the natural world and criminalise mass harm to nature. And it just strikes me in terms of kind of legal solutions that this is a very practical, pragmatic, doable thing that would address a lot of these key objectives around stewarding forests, oceans and biodiversity, transforming agriculture, food systems, etc. It's a very practical, in a certain way, very simple solution that could address and be an underlying foundational basis for a lot of the measures that would happen to support these objectives. So that's my proposal. Thank you.
Hello everyone. My name is Ismail Abu Osman. I come from Somalia. I work for an NGO, Somali Environmental Development Organization, SEDO. We work for climate and environment. Just we see for the, mostly when we talk for the COP, the focus for the government is, but the reality is the local NGOs must get for the priority. So we have for money initiative for justice, we have for climate, project, climate change adaptation and mitigation in Hirshabelle. That is the state of Somali. Yeah, we have, we started for that project and we can't get for the any funding, but we started for our volunteers. We start for theories for and something. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much for that. I think it's really great that people are now, starting to talk about the things that they're doing and how do we bring this in, and that's great. That's exactly what we want. So I think, if whatever is being proposed as an initiative, we won't say no. We welcome the solutions that are coming from the initiatives and that wants to be in this space. So absolutely, I think we need to sum those solutions and welcome all initiatives to join this process. I am sure, the mapping exercise that we have done was a very labor-intensive process, but I am sure that we've missed a lot of existing things. So please do tell us if that was the case, and we will be happy to bring you into the process. But also, I think looking at what else is happening in the same areas that can be connected. I think on the justice side and the legal frame now with the ICJ decision, that is a discussion that is being elevated, and it's really interesting to think about what are the possibilities of solutions there. So again, if this is coming from an initiative, it's welcome. And I think probably there are other initiatives that connect to what you're doing, and that maybe you can strengthen your work, or you can strengthen their work by bringing this into these collective results. And I think nature-based solutions in particular is something that we will look to support and accelerate at this COP as well. So thank you for that. And hope that others, if you have initiatives, in our website there is a form that you can let us know, if you want to join this process, if you are an initiative. So please do come to that, and please do tell us, and we'll be here as well in these days, so please do come to us.
Thank you very much for all the questions and comments and thoughts that have been shared today. We are approaching the end of our session. I think we've had an excellent insight into what is happening around the action agenda, and some really good reflections around how that can be strengthened, but also how we can start positioning for the next 5 years of the action agenda. With that, I would like to hand over back to Bruna. I know you've been engaging quite a lot. to please give us a few closing remarks and reflections, and we'll also do the same from the champions before we close the session.
No, I think my job is the bureaucratic piece. It's their jobs to get you all excited. So I just want to say really thank you very much for engaging with us in this process. I know that it's a lot, but it's been so nice to see everyone's really goodwill in coming through this process with us. So really want to appreciate both our champions who have been with us on this journey of one single action agenda. It's so easy to go each your direction of what are your priorities, but really being very strongly supporting this process. So thank you very much.
Oh, well, yes, we want you to be excited because we are excited actually. And we have this type of meetings for a couple of times now already. In Bonn, we had roundtable. Yes, it's the consultation process that started for a while already, and what I'm also inspired to see that when we met in Bonn, Bruno, I think there was 400 initiatives. Now we have 600 initiatives, but it's still, you know, just the start of the process. So we are looking forward, and we are asking you to get back to us if you have anything that is missing from this piece. But I'm also excited to see the interest to this process because just a couple of days ago, I think the presidency has organized a webinar that was completely open webinar and any person could join. And I think 2,000 persons were online with us. So it's kind of a big interest that we see. That's why thank you so much for this. And yeah, next stop is New York, and the process is open for all.
Oh, just thank you very much, and bear in mind that this is for implementation. This is not an intellectual exercise. It's really a process that should be supportive to implementation, and we have to do it together. This is a proposition. We are trying to make it a proposition that could last for 5 years, but of course, it only will work if it brings the intended results, and we are partners on this, so we count on you to build this up to the end. Thank you so much.
With that, we can declare the session closed. Thank you very much for your participation.